Marley Davis had always been at home in her father's workshop, a single-story building on the outskirts of Mobile, Alabama, where the bay breeze sometimes carried the smell of saltwater through the wide garage doors. From the outside, Davis Auto Repair looked unassuming, plain gray walls with a sun-faded sign that read, Davis Auto, in block letters. But to the people who knew it, the place was a sanctuary of honest work and genuine care. And to Marley, it was practically a second home. Ever since she was big enough to hold a socket wrench, she'd been Rodney Davis's little helper. Rodney, or Rhino as his old football buddies called him, stood 6'2", with broad shoulders and forearms etched by years of turning wrenches. He had a salt and pepper beard and laugh lines around his eyes. People in Mobile trusted him not just because he knew engines, but because he had this easy smile that made you feel like you'd known him forever. Marley was 14, slender and a little taller than most girls her age. She had dark brown hair she usually kept in a simple ponytail or tucked under a bandana to keep it out of the oil and grease. On the weekends, she'd be out back with her dad, changing spark plugs or checking brake fluid. Sometimes she wore an old pair of coveralls from the 1980s, something her dad had kept around because they were still good. Other times, she wore jeans and steel-toed boots that scuffed the concrete floor. She never bothered with fancy nail polish. Grease inevitably got under her fingernails, no matter how many times she scrubbed. She liked the workshop's clamor, the clang of metal on metal, the hiss of compressed air, the hum of the engine fans. The place smelled of motor oil, coolant, and sometimes Rodney's aftershave when he walked by. She loved that smell, earthy, strong, comforting. Whenever she'd fix something, she felt this surge of pride. Her dad would give a small nod of approval, and her chest would fill with warmth. At Willowbrook High, however, her talent for fixing cars wasn't something people admired. Willowbrook was the kind of school where kids posted selfies at Starbucks or talked about the latest TikTok dance challenge. Marley never got the hang of that. She preferred scanning online forums about transmissions, reading up on torque specs, or practicing how to adjust a timing belt. She didn't see a point in wearing lip gloss or getting new sneakers every other month. Her mind was on brake rotors and engine idle speeds, not on the swirl of gossip that filled the halls. The teasing started small. A few kids in her English class made jokes about her always smelling like the bottom of a gas tank. One day, a boy named Travis asked if she used motor oil as perfume. She brushed it off with a shrug. But then Brett Colton, blonde hair, star of the JV baseball team, always wearing that cocky grin, took notice. He was the sort of kid who flashed his braces in front of teachers, said, "Yes, sir," and "No, ma'am," to earn easy praise, but behind that facade was something sharper. One Monday, Marley was in the cafeteria, wearing the same oil-stained boots she'd worn to the shop that morning. She'd done a quick job on a neighbor's Honda Civic before class, so there was still a faint smell of gasoline clinging to her jeans. Brett and his buddies took a seat at the table behind her. She heard them snickering, but she focused on her sandwich. Then came the words, "Hey, Junkyard Barbie." She stiffened but didn't turn. She was used to ignoring it. "Man, I swear she's got gear oil in her veins," Brett quipped. A few kids at the table giggled. Marley forced herself to swallow a lump in her throat. She remembered what her dad always said, "Don't let small minds make you small." But it still stung. When she left, they revved imaginary engines behind her. In the hallway, she heard coughs that sounded like sputtering mufflers. It was relentless. By the second week, the teasing escalated. She opened her locker to find a small plastic bag of lug nuts with a note reading, "Here's your lunch." She crumpled it up and tossed it. She didn't want to show them any reaction. A teacher walked by, saw the mess, but just kept going. Marley felt this pang of betrayal. Couldn't the adults see what was happening? At home, she said nothing. Rodney would have marched right into the principal's office, and Marley didn't want the drama. She just kept working in the shop, trying to forget. On a late afternoon, she replaced a set of brake pads on a customer's Toyota Camry. When she finished, her dad gave her a fist bump. "You're getting good, kid," he said. She smiled, but it didn't last long. She could already feel Monday morning looming, with more jokes waiting. Sure enough, that Monday, she found a battered Barbie doll stuffed in her locker, its hair dipped in black paint, a little sign taped to its chest, "Mechanic Princess." She took a breath, carefully placed the doll in her backpack, and closed the locker. She didn't cry. She refused to. But the tears threatened to come later that night as she stared at the ceiling in her room. In the weeks that followed, the bullying took on a digital form. A new Instagram account popped up, @GreaseGirlMobile, featuring clandestine photos of Marley in the workshop. The pictures were grainy but unmistakable, her leaning over an engine, her face smudged with oil, her ponytail half undone. The captions read things like, "She's got 10W30 for breakfast," or "Miss Gas Guzzler." She discovered it during third period one day, feeling her stomach drop when she saw the follower count, nearly 200 kids from school. She turned off her phone and didn't speak for the rest of the day. One morning, in the cafeteria, she overheard Brett bragging that he knew a friend of a friend who took the photos. Marley forced herself not to confront him. She remembered her dad's advice, "Pick your battles. Don't show your hand until it matters." But how long could she hold it in? She felt small, cornered, humiliated. The final straw came when she opened her locker and found an entire spool of old, greasy wiring stuffed inside. A sign taped to the door read, "Junkyard Queen." She stared at it for a long second, anger bubbling. She was about to slam the locker shut when she heard a teacher call out, "Everything okay?" She just mumbled, "Yeah," shut the door, and walked away. That evening, her dad noticed her quiet mood as they worked on a battered Ford F-150 with a misfiring cylinder. "Mar, you good?" he asked, wiping sweat from his brow. She forced a nod, "Just tired." He squinted, obviously concerned, but said nothing. She realized how much she wanted to tell him, but also feared his reaction. She could imagine him storming into Willowbrook High, furious. She didn't want that drama, so she stayed silent. Then one day, Rodney came home with a flyer from Willowbrook's main office, an invitation for parents to speak at Career Day. "I'm supposed to talk about the shop," he said, leaning on the kitchen counter. "They said I could bring a helper if I want." He looked at Marley expectantly. She swallowed, "I don't know, Dad." She imagined standing in front of all those kids, with Brett and his buddies filming, mocking. Rodney sighed, "Think about it. You know more about real work than half those folks. Could be good." The next morning at school, Marley found a note in her locker. "We can't wait to see your career at Career Day. Gonna bring your Barbies?" She stuffed it in her pocket, heart pounding. She was done. She walked straight to the principal's office, ignoring the whispers. Once inside, she asked to call her dad. The secretary hesitated, "Is everything okay, Marley?" Marley just said, "Please." Rodney arrived 20 minutes later in a black SUV that looked brand new. This time, he wasn't in his usual jeans and t-shirt. He wore pressed khakis, a crisp dress shirt, and polished shoes. When he walked through the front doors, a hush fell in the hallway. He spotted Marley waiting by the office, her eyes wet but her posture stiff. She didn't speak. She just gave him a look that said, "I can't do this alone." Rodney turned to the principal, who came rushing out of her office, startled by his sudden appearance. "Mr. Davis, is there an issue?" He gave a calm nod. "Yes, ma'am. We need to address something with your students. Now." His voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of a man who'd built a reputation for fairness and honesty in the community. Within minutes, an announcement went out for all students to gather in the auditorium. Marley stood at her dad's side, breath shaky, as they walked in. Kids whispered. Brett and his crew slouched in the back, looking smug, until Rodney stepped onto the stage. He gripped the microphone. Name's Rodney Davis. Some of y'all know me from Davis Auto, maybe your folks brought their cars in. Maybe you heard about me from your friends. Doesn't matter. What matters is my daughter, Marley. He pointed at her in the front row. She felt 1,000 eyes on her, but also felt her father's unwavering presence. She's been learning to fix cars since she was 9. She's got more skill than some grown men I've employed. And she's got a heart bigger than any bully's ego. He paused, scanning the crowd. I hear there's been talk, some of you think it's funny to mock a girl who knows her way around an engine. Let me tell you something, that's real work. That's honesty. If you're making fun of that, you might want to look at yourselves. Silence. No one moved. No one whispered. The principal stood by the curtains, hands clasped nervously. Marley could see Brett's face from the corner of her eye, red, uncertain, not quite so smug anymore. Rodney took a breath. I don't expect everyone here to become mechanics. But I do expect respect. This is my daughter. She's got skill, she's got dreams, and she deserves better than jokes and cheap shots. Now, if any of y'all have something to say it to me. He set the microphone down gently. For a moment, it felt like the entire auditorium was frozen. Then the principal cleared her throat. Thank you, Mr. Davis, she said quietly. Students, I'd like to remind you that harassment or bullying of any form is not tolerated at Willowbrook High. No one cheered, no one booed. They just sat there, stunned. Marley felt a sudden wave of relief, gratitude, and fear all at once. She left the stage with her dad, shoulders back, tears threatening to spill but not from sadness, this time, from relief. In the days after, the tone changed. The fake Instagram account vanished. Teachers seemed more watchful. Brett avoided her gaze. People didn't exactly line up to be her friend, but they also didn't cackle in the hallways anymore. A few kids asked her real questions about their parents' cars. A sophomore girl in biology, Kendra, approached her shyly to say, "My dad's truck is making this rattling noise. Any idea what it could be?" Marley gave her a quick answer. Kendra nodded, cool. Thanks. It was small, but it felt like a victory. When career day finally arrived, Marley wasn't sure if she'd speak. Rodney was set to talk about Davis Auto. She hung in the back, arms folded, scanning the crowd in the gym. Her dad finished his speech, explaining how auto repair is like detective work with grease. Then he gestured to Marley. I brought along my partner in crime. She's the future of Davis Auto. Mar, you want to say a few words? She hesitated, heart hammering. She saw Brett in the crowd, phone in hand. But she thought of how she'd fixed that Ford Escape, how she'd replaced the timing belt on a Dodge Charger. She remembered her dad's unwavering support. So she stepped forward. I'm Marley, she said into the mic, voice trembling just a little. I've been helping at my dad's shop since I was a kid. People think it's weird, but it's actually just about listening to an engine and figuring out what's wrong. I like that. Figuring stuff out. And maybe that's not so weird after all. She swallowed, glancing around. Anyway, thanks. It was short, but the applause that followed felt genuine. Some kids even nodded, like they finally got it. After the event, a junior named Alicia came up to Marley. That was brave, she said. I wish I had the guts to do something I really love. Marley managed a small smile. You do. Just gotta ignore the noise. Alicia nodded, eyes shining with understanding. At home that evening, Rodney was cooking a rare family dinner, spaghetti and meatballs, while Marley sat at the kitchen table doing homework. He looked over, you know I'm proud of you, right? She shrugged, yeah, Dad, I know. He turned off the burner and came to sit across from her. No, I mean it, March. You faced that whole school, and you never stooped to their level. She looked up, meeting his eyes. They were trying to break me, Dad. You kinda saved me. He shook his head. You saved yourself. I just showed up. In the weeks that followed, the tension at Willowbrook eased. Marley found she could walk the halls without bracing for the next insult. She still wore her boots, still had grease in her nails. But people saw her differently now. Maybe it was because they realized she wasn't backing down. Maybe it was because they'd never really known her in the first place. She started sitting with a small group at lunch, a couple of kids who were in the robotics club, one from the track team, and a girl named Tasha who had a knack for painting. They didn't share all the same interests, but they liked that Marley was real, no pretense. One afternoon, she was fixing a squeaky belt in a friend's Honda Accord after school, right in the parking lot. A teacher walked by, eyebrows raised, but said, "Nice work, Marley." She looked up, hands smudged with grease, and nodded, "Thanks." A couple of kids watched from a distance, not with mocking grins but with genuine curiosity. She realized then that sometimes, once you stand up, the fear goes away. People see you in a new light. Rodney started letting Marley take on more complicated tasks at the shop, things like diagnosing an electrical short or calibrating sensors on newer models. She'd grin whenever she got it right. He'd pat her on the back, "Told you, kid, you got a knack." She was no longer just the little helper. She was basically a junior mechanic. Customers asked for her, sometimes calling her Rhino Jr., which made her laugh. She felt strong, confident, like she'd reclaimed a piece of herself that had been under siege. A few times, Brett still popped up in the hallway, but he didn't say much. He'd nod in her direction, maybe out of guilt or maybe just to show he wasn't going to push it further. She never went out of her way to talk to him, but she felt no hatred. Just a kind of indifference. She'd proven him wrong by not letting his mockery define her. She discovered that the principal had quietly disciplined the group who made the Instagram account, though they never publicly apologized. That was okay. She didn't need their apology. She had her father's respect, her own pride, and a growing circle of people who appreciated her for who she was. She realized she didn't have to become popular or change her style to be accepted. She just needed to be real. One day, Ms. Bledsoe, her science teacher, asked Marley to demonstrate changing a small engine's oil for an upcoming class project on mechanical processes. Marley agreed, a little nervous about standing in front of the entire class. But when the day came, she set up a small lawnmower engine on a sturdy table, explaining each step with a calm voice. She pointed out the drain plug, how to measure the correct amount of oil, how to check for leaks. Students watched intently, and no one laughed. When she was done, Ms. Bledsoe clapped, "Excellent job, Marley. I think we all learned something." That afternoon, Marley felt lighter than she had in months. She thought about how easily she could have quit, stopped helping at the garage, tried to fit in with the crowd, maybe posted silly TikToks to gain acceptance. But that wasn't her. She loved engines, and she wasn't going to hide it. She realized she owed some thanks to her dad, who had marched into that auditorium in a crisp outfit and delivered a speech that shook the entire school. But she also realized that, in the end, it was her choice to keep going, to show up each day in those boots, with grease-stained jeans, refusing to flinch. The last few months of the school year were peaceful. People mostly left her alone, and some even approached her for advice on cars or for help with assignments. She found a new friend in Kendra, the girl who'd asked about her dad's truck. They sat together at lunch, sometimes joined by a few robotics club kids. They talked about everything from spark plugs to Marvel movies. Marley discovered she liked talking about stuff besides cars, too. She just needed the right people around. When summer finally arrived, she spent more time at the garage, helping her dad full-time. On her 15th birthday, Rodney handed her a small wrapped box. Inside was a brand new torque wrench, top of the line. She grinned so wide, tears pricked at her eyes. "Dad, this is expensive," she said. He shrugged, "You're worth it, kid. And if you're gonna do the job, do it right." She hugged him, feeling more certain than ever that she was on the right path. Sometimes, she'd remember the cruel jokes, the rummaged locker, the humiliating videos. But each time, the memory stung less. She'd proven she could withstand it, that her passion for engines was stronger than their ridicule. And each time she saw someone else getting mocked for being different, maybe the girl who coded her own games in the library, or the boy who was into vintage fashion, she'd quietly encourage them. "Don't let them stop you," she'd say. "They only laugh because they don't understand." By sophomore year, Marley had become a fixture at Willowbrook. Some kids still found her weird, but they respected her skill. The teachers often asked her to help set up mechanical demonstrations, and she even joined the robotics club. She never changed who she was, but the school's attitude had shifted. People started seeing that her so-called weirdness was actually talent and passion. They saw that if you needed your car jumped or your battery replaced, she was the person to call. And she always helped without a second thought, never rubbing it in, never acting superior. That earned her something far more lasting than popularity, genuine respect. Looking back, Marley realized that her story wasn't just about bullies or a black SUV pulling up in front of school. It was about learning that the real power was always in her hands. She didn't need to fight physically or stoop to name-calling. She just needed to keep doing what she did best, with her chin up, ignoring the petty jabs. Her father's appearance at the school had only given her the push to see that for herself. She'd always had that strength. She just needed a reminder. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where your passion makes you a target, think about Marley Davis. Think about how she didn't stop changing oil or tinkering with engines just because it wasn't cool. She kept going, kept being herself. In the end, that's the biggest victory. Because being unapologetically you is something no bully can take away. And if you're the one throwing the jokes, ask yourself why someone else's passion bothers you so much. Maybe, deep down, it's because you wish you had the courage to stand out, too. Marley's journey proved that real worth isn't found in approval from the crowd, it's found in the quiet, determined heart of someone who knows exactly who they are. She might have been teased for smelling like motor oil or for wearing old steel-toed boots, but she'd discovered a strength that didn't depend on trends or popularity. She'd found it in every spark plug she replaced, in every belt she tightened, in every "thank you" from a customer who needed her skill. And that kind of strength, genuine, unshakable, wasn't something the world could laugh away. Rodney liked to say, engines can always be fixed. It's people that are tricky. But as Marley stood tall, a torque wrench in one hand and her future in the other, she showed that even people can mend, too. Bullies can back off. Classmates can learn respect. A father can help his daughter see her own potential. And a girl can choose to be proud of what she loves, even if it makes her different. That's the story of Marley Davis, a girl in a greasy workshop, a father who believed in her, a high school that tried to bring her down, and the moment she decided to keep her head up. It's a story about courage and the unstoppable power of being true to yourself. Because the world doesn't need more copies. It needs originals, people unafraid to get their hands dirty for what they love, people like Marley, who show the rest of us that sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is stand in your own boots, in your own truth, and refuse to budge.